What is up, everybody? It is Mike Talks Fights, and I'm here to bring my predictions, picks, and breakdown for UFC 319. If you're here, like and subscribe, and comment your favorite underdog of the card. We got an amazing fight week. It is UFC 319. Dricus du Plessis and Khamzat Chimaev are fighting for the middleweight championship. This card is stacked from top to bottom. I want to give my picks, predictions, and breakdowns. So we're going to hop right into it with the Ultimate Fighter season finale at flyweight. We got Alibi Adiris and Joseph Morales. In this fight, I'm going to have to go with Alibi. I think Joseph Morales is a very well-rounded fighter. He's good everywhere. He's tough. He's gritty. He has a lot of heart. He wants to be here. He wants to be in the UFC. He has been in the UFC previously. I believe he had 3 fights. And he's looking to make his way back. He's still young. He's only 30 years old. I think he, has what it takes to fight in the UFC. But do I think he has what it takes to beat Alibi? Probably not. This guy Alibi is very, very good. He has, he's pretty well-rounded in his own respect. He has very good wrestling, very good striking, dynamic striking, as we saw in the semifinal against my boy Roy. I thought Roy was doing very well in that fight, and he was scrambling to get back to his feet, and Alibi had this awkward, like off center jumping knee that put Roy down. It was very impressive to me. He impressed me through the Ultimate Fighter season very much. And so is Joseph Morales. He's very experienced. It's just hard to say. Is Joseph Morales going to be able to beat this guy? I think Alibi has what it takes to be a top 10 in the flyweight division potentially. So I'm pretty excited about him. And if I had to pick, I would say I'm leaning Alibi, maybe inside the distance. So we're going to move now to the UFC page because for whatever reason, Joseph Morales and Alibi Adiris do not get any respect from the actual UFC page, and neither is Deone Barbosa. So JJ Aldridge is no longer fighting, and we have Karine Silva taking on Deone Barbosa in a women's flyweight bout. Deone Barbosa is, from what I've seen, known to gas. She's pretty solid. She has good jiu-jitsu, decent striking, but do I think she's beating Karine Silva? No. Karine Silva already got checked in her last fight against Viviane Arujau. Everyone thought she was going to go out there and finish her. She has 18 wins, 17 of which come by finish. And I think she's looking to get back on track here and get back in the win column against Deone Barbosa. Karine Silva is a pretty solid up-and-comer. She's very experienced, and that Viviane Arujau fight, I'm sure she learned a couple lessons there. I don't think Deone Barbosa is coming in on short notice and taking a win over Karine Silva. Karine Silva hasn't necessarily... You know what? Karine Silva, inside the distance over Deone Barbosa, probably in the first 2 rounds. I think she's coming out and looking to make a statement, getting back in the win column. And, I'm pretty confident in that. Deone Barbosa already has suspect gas tank, and if she's taking this fight on short notice, I would be led to believe that she's going to gas even harder than usual. So give me Karine Silva inside the distance, and hopefully she makes a good showing of herself here, gets back in the win column, because I think she is a pretty promising prospect. Next, we got Bryan Battle and Nursultan Ruziboyev in the middleweight division. Bryan Battle previously was fighting at welterweight. He also has fights at middleweight, but he's been struggling to make that weight at welterweight. And now he's fighting a pretty large guy for the division in Nursultan Ruziboyev at 6'5". This fight's tough to say, man. I want to pick Bryan Battle. I always pick Bryan Battle. We've loved Bryan Battle, me and the boys, for some time now. But Nursultan Ruziboyev presents a pretty difficult stylistic matchup for him, in my opinion. He's a lengthy striker. He has really good ground game. I know Bryan Battle has pretty solid jiu-jitsu in his own respect, but this fight to me is tough to call, man. And I think Bryan Battle is... I try not to look at the odds, but I think Bryan Battle is almost a 2-1 favorite. Something is telling me Ruziboyev is going to have some success here. I want to pick Bryan Battle just because I like him, which makes this a biased pick. But I see the striking exchanges being relatively even. The thing is that Nursultan has that long... I mean, they both have a long reach, but Nursultan is taller. I can see straights landing down the middle for him. And Bryan Battle's not chinny, but sometimes when he gets hit, it causes me concern. Like I see him get hit, and I'm like, oh. So I'm nervous. I'm nervous for Bryan Battle in this fight. I think it's going to the scorecards. If I had to guess, I'm saying over 2.5 rounds. But for a pick, it's hard to even say, is this fight going to be a stand-up fight? Is somebody going to engage in the wrestling and grappling? This one is hard for me to call, man. I want to pick Brian Battle, but something is telling me Nursultan Ruziboyev is going to get it done on the scorecards. I don't know. I'm going to have to revisit this fight. And when I get back to my favorite props, best bets, parlays, and lottos, I will be talking about this fight more in detail because I have to think on it. I've been thinking about it a lot already, but it's very hard to say. Something's telling me Ruziboyev is live here as an underdog. And then we will move to the next fight, which is a lightweight bout between Edson Barboza and Drakkar Klose. This is the battle of the Unks. We got Drakkar Klose at 37 and Edson Barboza, I believe, at 39. A lot of people at one point were high on Drakkar Klose. He's dealt with a lot of injuries, some inactivity. But for me, what causes concern is Drakkar Klose's chin. I'm not saying that he's the most chinny guy in the division or anything like that, but he's fighting Edson Barboza, a very technically skilled striker, a very dynamic, explosive striker. And I would 100% put the strength of schedule on the side of Edson Barboza. He's been fighting at 145. For this fight, he is moving up to 155. And in his later stage of his career, I think it's better that he doesn't have to cut as much weight. So I'm heavily leaning Edson Barboza in this fight. Outside of if Drakkar Klose can get the wrestling off and exhaust Edson Barboza and then start to have success in the striking, kind of like Bryce Mitchell did, I see Edson Barboza just picking Drakkar Klose apart on the feet. You know, we've seen him up against these young guys. He takes damage and he recovers well, even at his age. We saw it against Lerone Murphy. We saw it against Sadiq Youssef. Edson Barboza is just really good. And for his age, he still looks fast. He still looks explosive. And I don't think Drakkar Klose has what he needs to win this fight. So I'm going to go with Edson Barboza, probably a 29-28 decision. Or honestly, I could even see him getting him out of there in the first round or second round. So FanDuel has props, wins by knockout in rounds 1 or 2. It's the round grouping bets. I think Edson Barboza is live for a finish, but if I was making an official call, I'm going to say Edson Barboza on the scorecards. But like I said, once we get to that favorite prop video, we're going to see how I'm feeling. Edson Barboza to win this fight over Drakkar Klose in the Battle of the Unks. Next, we have my boy Chase Hooper against Alex Hernandez. This is another interesting fight because as we saw in Alex's last fight, he was going up against Kurt Holobaugh, and he was not winning the striking engagement, so he was resorting to his wrestling. I don't think he's going to want to resort to his wrestling here against Chase Hooper. I don't think Chase Hooper is completely out of it on the feet. Alex Hernandez is fast. He does have some power, and he is experienced. But Chase Hooper is a difficult problem to deal with. He's going to have the height advantage, the reach advantage. He's a lot younger, and he's pretty big for the division. He's growing into his frame. He's getting those grown man muscles. Chase Hooper is very good. I think he's a solid up-and-coming prospect. He's been in the UFC for a little bit now. He has not the highest strength of schedule, but he has been getting fights in the UFC, and he has been winning. So in this fight, I think he's going to make I don't want to say a statement. I'm not sure if Chase Hooper finishes Alex Hernandez here, but I do not think he's completely out of his depth in the striking department. I think he will be able to initiate the wrestling and grappling exchanges, and then once Alex Hernandez has the threat of the takedown imposed on him, then Chase Hooper will be able to start getting off on the feet. Because, threaten that, a little feint, a little level change. Now Alex Hernandez is worried about it, and now Chase Hooper is starting to have success on the feet as well. And if he starts to have success on the feet and maybe hurts Alex Hernandez, I don't see Hernandez trying to engage in the grappling. And if he does, I can see him getting his neck snatched up and submitted. So if I had to make a pick here, I'm going Chase Hooper, maybe by submission. Something is telling me he's going to win 29-28, 29-28, and 30-27 on the scorecards, but I would not be surprised to see Chase Hooper find a submission or even a ground and pound TKO. Chase Hooper, although he looks like a young boy, he has some pretty vicious ground and pound in his own respect. Give me Chase Hooper here. I think he's going to get it done and propel himself forward in the division. Next, we move to a women's strawweight bout between Jessica Andrade and Lupi Godinez. I'm a big fan of Lupi Godinez. I'm also a big fan of Jessica Andrade. The age difference here is not wide. You would think Jessica Andrade is 40 years old. She's been in the UFC for quite some time. She has a lot of fights. She also has a very low fight IQ at times. She sends winging shots. She overextends. She's susceptible to getting taken down. And sometimes she just doesn't do what she needs to do to get back up to the feet. And when she does, she gives herself up for submissions, and she does not properly defend half the time. We've seen it multiple. I mean, we've seen it against Erin Blanchfield. Erin Blanchfield's really good. I don't want to take anything away from Jessica Andrade there, but I think Lupi Godinez is a very well-rounded fighter. She has great wrestling. She has pretty solid boxing as well. She keeps the guard high and tight. She protects herself well. Better than Jessica Andrade. Lupi Godinez's striking defense is better than Jessica Andrade. I think the power advantage goes to Jessica Andrade, but if I had to make a realistic, logical pick here, I'm saying Lupi Godinez to win 29-28 unanimously on the scorecards. But the D-Gen always wants to take Jessica Andrade by knockout. I want to take Jessica Andrade by finish, but I'm going to be a disciplined member of the UFC picks and gambling community, and I'm going to say Lupi Godinez should take this fight in a close decision. She's just a little bit more primed. We've seen Jessica Andrade making a lot of mistakes recently. You know, people speculate she's just fighting for money at this point. I do not agree with that. Obviously, I think she still wants to win, but she's going up against a pretty primed contender in Lupi Godinez, and I think the wrestling and striking combination could be a problem for Andrade. We'll see what happens, though. This fight might be closer than the odds suggest. I do not know the odds yet for this fight. I just try to go in blind and make my picks with no bias. So I'm going to go Lupi Godinez on the scorecards. I think she'll be able to get off her wrestling, find control time, and then in turn have success on the feet with that threat of the takedown. Next, we have a middleweight bout between Gerald Meerschaert, GM3, the legend, and Mikhail Oleg-Jacek. Mikhail Oleg-Jacek is fighting out of Fighting Nerds now. He looked good in his last fight. He's 1-0 as a Fighting Nerd. So I do like that. I do like the move of Jim's. GM3, you know, he's tried and true. Obviously, you can see he's 37-19. He's lost a lot of fights, but he's also fought a lot of high-level contenders. GM3 could make this fight tricky. Realistically, what I see happening is Mikhail Oleg-Jacek is going to go out there and he's going to most likely TKO Gerald Meerschaert within the first 2 rounds, probably in the first round. He carries a lot of power. He has good boxing. But Gerald Meerschaert, in his own respect, does not have the worst hands. He's very slow, but he has a little bit of pop. And I think if Mikhail Oleg-Jacek overextends with a big right hook, Gerald Meerschaert could get him to the ground and find a submission. How likely do I think it is for Gerald Meerschaert to do that? Maybe a 20% chance. I think Mikhail Oleg-Jacek has most likely, if he sees what I see with GM3, he doesn't want to be on the ground. I'm sure his coaches, his team, they all know GM3 is a big submission threat. So Mikhail Oleg-Jacek, if I had to guess, is working on takedown defense and, you know, not overextending when it comes to the striking engagements. I think he can get in, get out, move, hurt GM3, and probably find a TKO within the first 2 rounds. So yeah, give me Mikhail Oleg-Jacek. I'm rooting for GM3 though. You know, I'm always rooting for my boy Gerald Meerschaert, so I would like to see him pull it out, but he's fighting a very powerful Polish striker in Mikhail Oleg-Jacek, and I would be convinced Mikhail Oleg-Jacek can finish this fight here. Yeah, Mikhail Oleg-Jacek by knockout in rounds 1 or 2 is the pick. But of course, if we see Gerald Meerschaert submission at plus 900 or something crazy, you know that's always worth a sprinkle. Next, we have a lightweight bout between King Green, formerly Bobby Green, and Carlos Diego Ferreira. Another battle of the Unks here. The CDF is actually the older fighter here against Bobby Green. So Bobby Green has been given a guy who's closer to his age. He has taken a significant amount of damage recently. I kind of want to take Bobby Green here. He's a clean striker. The only thing is CDF carries a lot of power in his shots, and he can wrestle. Bobby Green typically has good takedown defense, but at the age Bobby Green is at and the damage that he has taken, he has a pretty set in stone fighting style. I don't think we're going to see Bobby Green come out there and hold a high boxing guard. You know, he fights with his hands very low. He relies on his head movement and his speed. He does have really tricky striking, but I think that, you know, with the damage that Bobby Green has taken in his recent career, it's been heinous. Jalen Turner put him out worse than I've seen pretty much anyone get put out. I don't know what the ref was doing there, but he took an unnecessary amount of damage in that fight. He's taken damage in a lot of his fights here recently. Fights with his hands very, very low. Could Bobby Green tag CDF and finish him or find a decision victory? Yes. But with those low hands and the damage, I think Carlos Diego Ferreira is in a good spot here to win, potentially by knockout. This one's tough to call, but just based off what I've seen recently, like I said, Bobby Green isn't going to be putting his hands up anytime soon. He has not done it so far. And because of that, I think he's going to be susceptible to getting cracked on the feet. Give me CDF. He's a little bit older, but at the same time, they're both at similar points in their career. And I think Bobby Green has taken a lot more damage. So give me CDF. I'm actually interested to see who the favorite is here. I thought Bobby Green might be an underdog, and it was making me want to pick him. It's just hard. I think he's going to find himself potentially getting cracked here. Give me CDF inside the distance. And then we move to the main card. We got Tim Elliott and Kai Asakura in a flyweight bout. Kai Asakura's first fight after his title shot against Alex Pantoja in his debut. He's 21-5. He did not look great. We've seen that he has explosive striking. He's a very powerful guy. He has fought at 135 as well. Tim Elliott presents a very difficult stylistic matchup for Kai Asakura. Can I see Kai Asakura getting him out of there early? Yes. Can I see Tim Elliott making the fight gritty, making the fight gnarly, nasty, wrestling, control, ground and pound, submission threats? Yes. And I kind of want to pick Tim Elliott here, man. Old reliable. Tim Elliott is a very solid fighter. He's well-rounded. He has an awkward striking style. He is pretty solid wrestling, good cardio. And he has a lot of UFC experience against a lot of good fighters. Kai Asakura did not impress me against Alex Pantoja. And obviously I know that's against Alex Pantoja, the champion of the division, who is currently lapping the division. But I think Tim Elliott presents some difficult situations for Kai Asakura here. And then disclaimer, obviously Asakura could go out there and nuke him. So if you're confident in Asakura, it's probably not super wide on the odds. I believe he should be a favorite, probably a minus 180, minus 200 favorite. But I'm going to go out on a whim and say that the dog can get it done here. I think Tim Elliott can control Kai Asakura on the ground. All he needs is a little bit of striking, close the distance, and get one takedown per round to win this fight. I don't see Kai Asakura scrambling any crazy type of way. I mean, maybe he does. Maybe I'm wrong. But something's telling me Tim Elliott is live here, and I'm pretty sure he's going to be a big underdog. So hesitantly, tentatively, give me Tim Elliott to win this on the cards in a 29-28 decision after potentially taking a little bit of damage in the first round. That one's going to come back to bite me. I feel like I should take Kai Asakura inside the distance, but I want to pick a dog, and Tim Elliott is just screaming at me. Tim Elliott is barking, baby. Let's go. Tim Elliott, all reliable to get it done. And this is a very, very fun fight here. We got Jared Cannonier and Michael Venom Page in a middleweight bout. The middleweight division is in such a beautiful spot right now, and it's interesting to see MVP fighting up at middleweight and doing it in the UFC. Jared Cannonier, very powerful striker. He's getting older, but at the same time, Michael Venom Page is not young either. This is the third battle of the Unks on the card. MVP is just such a good striker. He is very awkward, high level, technical, fast. He doesn't really get hit all too often. We saw him get finished once in Bellator, but he looked real good in his last fight against Shara. Shara only has one eye, so I'm not going to say that he's going to do the same thing he did there against Jared Cannonier. I believe Jared Cannonier will have some success. I just don't see him landing clean. Could Jared Cannonier knock Michael Page out? Yeah, of course. Jared Cannonier can knock anybody out, but his finishing rate is not as high as it used to be. And I think Michael Venom Page moves very well. He's very fast. Even at this point in his career, we see he's 23-3. He's doing very well in the UFC so far. I'm going to go with Michael Venom Page to win by decision here. 29-28 on the scorecards. There is cause for concern. There is worry that he could get nuked. That is always an opportunity for Jared Cannonier when he's fighting. He does have very heavy hands, and he has good cardio as well. So I'm going to say Michael Venom Page, 29-28 on the scorecards. He's going to keep the fight on the feet and maintain his range, keep his distance, get in, get out like he does, and make Jared Cannonier frustrated. I think Michael Venom Page has a very unique ability to frustrate fighters. We saw that big time against Kevin Holland. He just could not get to him. And then when Kevin Holland did try to engage in the wrestling, he just was not having any success. Could Jared Cannonier go out here and wrestle Michael Venom Page to the ground? Possibly, but something's telling me this is going to be a striking bout between a crafty, lengthy speedster and a what do we say? A brute in Jared Cannonier. Jared Cannonier is always a threat, but I'm going with Michael Venom Page. I'm very excited for this one, and it would be cool for Michael Venom Page to boost up into the upper echelon of the division. It would be nice to see him potentially getting a number one contender bout here soon. But that's just me having my Bellator Never Dies hopes. Either way, I'm going with Michael Venom Page to get it done. Let's go. And then next we got Carlos Prates, Jeff Neal in a welterweight bout. This is a fun one. This fight was already scheduled in the past. Jeff Neal was not able to fight. And this one to me is cut and dry. Jeff Neal is a good striker. He has some power. He has decent striking defense. But Carlos Prates to me is going to be too much for him. That Muay Thai striking, he's very dangerous. That left hand is lethal, to say the least. Carlos Prates is a very solid fighter. He's going to have the height and reach advantage. I think the same pick that I made the first time these guys were scheduled to fight is Carlos Prates inside the distance. I think Carlos Prates is going to knock Jeff Neal out. Jeff Neal's a little bit older now. Carlos Prates is looking to get back in the win column after a not so close fight against Ian Gary, but in the 5th round, he almost had Ian Gary out of there. And I rate Ian Gary as maybe the best welterweight in the world. So Carlos Prates on a full camp against Jeff Neal for the second time. I'm going to go Carlos Prates probably by knockout in the 2nd round. I feel very confident in this pick. Carlos Prates by KO will most likely be in my favorite props this week, but I'm also not very high on Jeff Neal. I never have been. Let's go. And now we got Aaron Pico making his UFC debut against Lerone Murphy in the featherweight division. I actually think I saw the odds for this one, and I believe Lerone Murphy is an underdog in this fight. 16-0, primed and ready to go. Aaron Pico is a explosive striker with very good offensive wrestling. Lerone Murphy is not the wrestling type of guy. He's usually, keep it on the feet, win some engagements. He can wrestle in his own respect. But I think I'm going to go with the guy who has more UFC experience. We've seen it time and time again. These guys come over from Bellator or wherever they're coming from, and they jump in against a high-level ranked opponent, and they just get exposed. Aaron Pico is very good, though, and I think his finishing upside in this fight will be higher than Lerone Murphy's. If I was going to say who has a more likely chance of finishing the fight, I'll say Aaron Pico. But will he do it? Probably not. I see Lerone Murphy maintaining range, using kicks and his long straights. And I think he's going to point fight his way to a decision here. There could be some worry in the 1st round where he gets cracked, is able to, recover, get his wits back about him, and maintain safety for the rest of the fight. I'm actually rooting for Lerone Murphy too. And if you know me, you know I'm not the biggest Lerone Murphy guy. But there's something about somebody coming into the UFC from another organization and then immediately just getting a title shot, or not a title shot, a debut against a high-level opponent. Lerone Murphy could be fighting for the title. I know he doesn't necessarily have the most exciting style, but Lerone Murphy is 16-0. He's never lost a fight. And they're like, oh, instead of getting a number one contender match, we're going to try to use you to build Aaron Pico and see if we can get a fun, more exciting contender. I understand from a business standpoint, but it feels a little bit disrespectful to Lerone Murphy to do him like this. Just how they were doing with Movsar Evloev. They were giving Aaron Pico to Movsar like, oh my God, maybe Aaron Pico will knock him out. We don't have to deal with him anymore. I feel like it's kind of a similar spot here with Lerone Murphy. So in that regard, I'm rooting for Lerone Murphy, a guy that I usually am not a fan of, just based on respect. He's going to show Aaron Pico that the UFC is a different level, and I think he's going to cash it on the scorecards, 29-28 decision, and hand Aaron Pico his first loss in his first UFC fight. And next we have the main event, baby. What everyone's been waiting for. Khamzat Chimaev finally is given his title shot in the middleweight bout against Dricus Du Plessis. And this is a tough one to call, man. Like, the general consensus has been Khamzat Chimaev has 2 rounds to find a finish over Dricus Du Plessis. And if he doesn't do it, Dricus Du Plessis is going to drown him and either win on the scorecards or find a late finish. Something is telling me Dricus is going to win this fight, and I really like Khamzat Chimaev. I am a huge fan of both of these guys. This one is very difficult to pick from a fan standpoint and from an analytics standpoint. I like Dricus Du Plessis. He has shown time and time again that he is essentially unbeatable. We've seen him in close fights. We've seen him hurt, and none of it matters. You know, even against Israel Adesanya, he face plants himself, planking on the ground, and before you know it, he's just holding on to Izzy's ankle and drags him to the canvas. Dricus Du Plessis will look like he is on death's door, and then out of nowhere, he's just rejuvenated and seems to be full of energy yet again. It happens all the time. He is an absolute spark plug. He has an unlimited battery as far as I'm concerned. And that is where Khamzat Chimaev lacks. You know, Dricus Du Plessis, a guy who some people say does not have cardio, but as far as I'm concerned, he has some of the best cardio we've seen. He fights crazy. He's looking to find a finish at all times, and he does not stop. Khamzat Chimaev, we have seen slow down in the past. He fought a short notice Kamaru Usman up a weight class. And in the third round, he was gassed out and ended up losing the third round. Obviously, this is a much different opportunity. It's a 5-round title fight. I'm sure Khamzat Chimaev has been training. I'm sure he's been working on his cardio, working on his energy conservation, and he will be prepared for 5 rounds. But Dricus Du Plessis is an enigma of the sport. And I think that he's a tank. You know, a fight is a fight. You can have the most technical fighter in the world, but tanks can fight. You know what I'm saying? Like at any level, you got the kid in high school who's really good at kickboxing versus the one guy who's just a savage. And then the technical guy who trains in the gym just gets his ass kicked. It happens at all levels of the sport. This is a fight at the end of the day, and tanks win fights. So I'm going here, Dricus Du Plessis to potentially find a later finish. It's hard to say, man, because if Khamzat Chimaev does not get that finish early in the fight, do I see him making it 5 rounds against Dricus? It's hard to say. But I'm leaning Dricus Du Plessis. I'm not sure about the method of victory. Maybe a TKO or submission in the later stages of the fight, or potentially a 49-46 decision. These guys are both finishers. Do I see it going to the scorecards? Probably not. So if I'm picking Dricus Du Plessis, I got to go Dricus Du Plessis inside the distance. I think whoever you pick in this fight, it's probably going to be by finish. And Khamzat could go out there and do what he does every single time, just maul his opponent. But he is facing another mauler in Dricus Du Plessis. This is when an immovable object meets an unstoppable force, and I am so excited for this card. Like I said, the middleweight is stacked right now. We have a lot of up-and-coming contenders and a lot of fun fights to make moving forward. Something's telling me Dricus Du Plessis is getting it done. So I'm going to rock with Dricus this weekend as an underdog. Just his energy, his aura, his vibe, the things that he has to say in the lead up to this fight, he just reeks of confidence. And having that belt, looking for another title defense, he has an immeasurable amount of confidence moving in here. And of course, Khamzat Chimaev is a very, very tough fight for anybody. We know this. I just think Dricus is going to be the bigger guy. He's going to have the better cardio. And I think he probably has the power advantage. And straight up technical striking, I'm going to give it to Khamzat. But if he doesn't find that early finish, he's going to be in trouble. So give me Dricus Du Plessis to take this and still knocks. I'm very excited for this card. Later this week, I'm going to be dropping my favorite props, best bets, parlays, and lottos, just to give you guys an idea of where my head is at. If you've made it this far into the video, of course, like and subscribe. I'm trying to drop as consistently as I can. UFC 319 is going to be one for the books. This card is absolutely stacked, and I'm super excited. And of course, if you're betting, I always have to leave the disclaimer. Do your own research. Don't just listen to somebody else, because you could do some research and be like, I have a completely different opinion of this fight than this guy whose video I just watched. And in that case, you might want to pick something else. I'm just giving my thoughts because I'm very passionate about the sport. I love the sport, and I've been watching it for quite some time now. So these are my picks. Some things could be subject to change, methods, some close winners like that Brian Battle, Nursultan Ruziboya fight. I have to do some contemplating on that one, but I'm very excited for this one. Thank you for tuning in. Always make sure to bet responsibly, and most importantly, have fun watching the fights, y'all. I'm very excited. UFC 319, let's go.